You can execute so many good ideas and so many good strategies from many places around the world. There is certain advantage or disadvantage from each country or the market size that you want to go into. But in terms of setting up an idea, a project, or a culture, you can do that anywhere around the world. And that's what's really changing today. And I think that's a really nice thing.
I'm Jonathan Sellers, and I built the Borderless Founder for entrepreneurs who are ready to think bigger than their home market. Most people assume building internationally is out of reach. This series is for the ones who went anyway. This is the Borderless Founder Gone Global. Alejandro Carrizosa is one of the co-founders of Hydrate, a premium stainless steel insulated products brand built from the ground up in Asunción, Paraguay. He and his co-founders studied abroad, traveled extensively, came back home, and built a company that is now exporting across Latin America, with distribution hubs on 2 continents. In this episode, Alejandro invited me to tour their facility and talk about building with a global mindset from day one, navigating logistics out of a landlocked country, and why Paraguay may be one of the most underrated scaling bases in South America.
Our main brand, which is Hydrate, we started 8 years ago. Like I said, we got to travel a lot and see the world with my 2 co-founders, which are my kindergarten, middle school, high school classmates. So they've been my friends my whole life. So once we traveled a lot, we had many experiences. Then we came back because this is where our family is. We got together, we did like 5 or 6 business plan, and we like this Hydrate brand as a business model the most, which is Hydrate is a stainless steel insulated products, high premium products. And when we were traveling a lot, we got to see that in many other countries, they already had this product, but it was mostly like a trendy product. And for us, it was kind of like mind blowing because for us here, it's a necessity, because it's so hot. Paraguay is one of the hottest points in the world sometimes, and Latin America in general is very hot.
The product idea came from being out in the world and seeing what didn't exist back home. But from the beginning, Alejandro and his co-founders weren't just thinking about Paraguay.
And I think there's not a lot of companies that do that here, but I think that's going to be the trend moving forward. And I think there's 2 key things about that. First is a mindset, just having that from day one, it like clears your pathway of where to grow and your vision, So I've done things and like strategies 5-6 years ago that we're using today. And this is very satisfying to see that you're kind of going through those growing stages. But I think always having that mindset is very important, And then the second part is speaking about Paraguay directly. Paraguay is a small market, so 6 to 7 million people. And with how interconnected the world is today, I think it's just natural that when you're from a small market, you're going to have to start branding and thinking and scaling up more regionally and hopefully then internationally to be more competitive, So I think the small market has its advantages as well. But if you eventually want to be a big player internationally, you just have to think about what is that path going to be towards growing.
Today, Hydrate is operating across 3 major Latin American markets, but logistics out of a landlocked country is always the first question.
I think that could be also kind of like a misconception because we're landlocked, and I think that's how people see it. But if you think about it, like supply chain and logistics has been growing so fast in the past few years, there are solutions to it, So we do have the river coming up, so you can bring your supply here as well. Now there's doing this project called Bioceanica as well, where they're doing this route that's going to be, Paraguay is going to be the heart of South America on a route that's going to cross from like Chile to Brazil as well. So it's going to be connecting several. You have the Chinese investment in Peru as well in doing a port, which is a huge investment. So I think the logistics world is growing so fast that you're going to have options, You do have options here in Paraguay, and if you want to bring it for the Paraguayan market, there's a few more lead times, so it could be a little bit slower, but it's not that drastic and it's not that complicated. And if you're thinking about using this as a base for growing internationally, you can still operate from here anywhere around the world. So we're actually looking at having logistic hubs in Uruguay, Panama. So Uruguay for Mercosur, which is down south, South America. Panama for Central America. We're also looking into Germany and Netherlands for Europe. So I think there's many options on how you can manage that, but I think people always see that from a case that it's landlocked, Again, it's minor thing, but it does add a few lead time and a few extra costs in that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I want to dig into that just a little further. So you're saying for Hydrate, you're looking to basically place distribution hubs
Yeah.
strategically.
Yeah.
Okay, and so obviously you get to Montevideo to Uruguay through the river. Would this?
Yeah,
be
they come down through the river when it comes to Paraguay. You can bring it through water, or you can also bring it by truck. So that's, for example, a small, not small difference depending on your business cycle. But yeah, for example, if you want to bring it through the river, it's another 15 to 20 days. If you bring it by truck, it's 3 days. Obviously,
Okay.
truck is a little bit more expensive. River is cheaper. So you have the options. Depends on how well you adjust your forecast, your timing, your demand planning. But you have the options. But yeah, those extra days on a high volume scale, I understand it can be a little bit problem, but there are ways to manage.
The logistics piece connects directly to something bigger. What Paraguay is becoming as a regional base for businesses thinking about South America.
Paraguay is going through a transition period. I think it's getting a lot of investment funds from outside. And I think a lot of people are coming here to invest in the country from a saving kind of perspective, because fiscally and taxing is very low, one of the lowest in the regions. We have 10% VAT, 10% corporate, and dividend is also even lower than 10%. So a lot of companies are moving through that, but I think the huge change, and I think what people here on moving forward, and founders and new people that come here to set up companies, it's not about only coming here to save costs, which can be financially have a huge impact, but I think it's also about how we develop the country and how the new founders that come here use this as a scaling base, not only as a saving cost kind of perspective, So it's about coming here, seeing what kind of logistics work for you, what kind of strategy works for you, what are the markets that you want to target, So we need to prepare ourselves to, again, be a scaling base for people that want to set up countries here in South America. And because we are in the middle of it, the heart of it, I think there's a lot of opportunities growing forward.
That scaling-based framing extends to how Alejandro thinks about talent and hiring. For a company of 70 people, the operation he's built is worth understanding.
So I think that's another thing that's growing a lot here is the talent and the pooling of people that are coming here to work from different parts of the world, and also locally here in Paraguay. There's a lot of options, and Paraguay in general is kind of agile in the process of hiring people, setting up a company, creating your bank accounts. I think that kind of thing is very agile, especially when working with the private sector. With the public sector, you sometimes have a little bureaucracy, and it's kind of normal, but overall, comparing to other countries that I visited and stuff like that, where it's much more bureaucratic, I think it's very agile. So I think finding the talent here it's pretty common. We have a really good workforce, and we're very, very passionate about work as well. So people here, it's very part of the culture to be like, I need to work, I need to go to find work. I love working. It's where you spend most of the day. So it's part of our culture as well to have very hardworking people, But yeah, I think we're doing well there. I think one of the disadvantages maybe would be that because, again, we're a small market, if you're looking for like very specific technical capacities, that could be harder, And this is something that you're already seeing comparing. You see these huge tech companies in the US, which are comparing to the capacities in China, and they're saying there's much more talent, because of the bigger population. So I think with a smaller population, a few technical, if it's a very specific market industry, you might have fewer options, but I think you'll still find people that are very well educated and ready to go out to work.
One of the more interesting things about how Alejandro has structured the business is keeping everything, the warehouse, the marketing team, the sales floor, all in one building.
Usually in Paraguay, a lot of people have like their distribution center 40 minutes away from the capital. And then you have like your corporate sales team and marketing teams and more like in towers or offices and stuff like that. We like to have everyone in the same building because, first of all, we get along really, really well with everyone, and it's just like a fun environment. And second of all, I think it helps with the environment. It's different just like calling someone, then going down and speak to get into the logistics thing and talking about, hey, my customer's waiting for that order and stuff like that. So I really like a fluent kind of communication in all ways.
The research and development piece is where the international strategy really comes into focus.
When we're thinking about worldwide, internationally growing, what we see is that one of the few key things is going to be always being up to date with innovation, you know. So because manufacturing has grown so fast, and it's available for any company today, whether it's in Asia, Mexico, Brazil, manufacturing companies, countries that are very big, you also have to be really up to date with what you're doing from a research and development point. You know, I think that's one of the key things to being competitive globally. So yeah, those are all the areas. They all have their management, and we're now building a BI team as well, you know, for more analytics.
So you were mentioning to me just earlier, I guess obviously thinking about global research and development, but you were also mentioning to me earlier developing some products for the local market or regional market, specifically which are culturally driven.
Yeah.
And so obviously in this region, mate is very popular as a drink. And so you were telling me about there's both vessels to I guess bring it with you for hot versus cold versions of the drink.
It's a different technology for hot and cold, you know. And the cold one is very Paraguay specific. It's called terere, you know, so it's very, very Paraguayan. Like when you see that around the world, you know he's probably from Paraguay.
Okay.
Mate is more regionally, so we drink that a lot here, but you also drink it in Uruguay, Argentina, and mate is growing really fast in other parts of the world as well, you know. But yeah, we try to separate our mindset that we started here locally, but now we're kind of forming this headquarter team, where this headquarter team is gonna view our own company as just a client, you know, because we're gonna see like, okay, this is our Paraguay client, but then we're gonna have Brazilian client, Argentinian clients, so they're gonna be analyzing as well what are the future developments that are very focused, you know, for other countries. Like if you go more towards Asia, maybe matcha products that you could be working on are gonna be more specific, you know. So it's all about strategy, where you want to grow, what you want to do, what you want to develop, what kind of creativity your research and development team also brings to the table. And also trying to find, you know, like new opportunities and what are things that the competitors are not doing right now.
The Maquila regime is a piece of the Paraguay story that matters for anyone thinking about South American manufacturing or distribution. Alejandro broke down how it works, even though it's not a strategy Hydrate currently uses.
In terms of quality, we have the same quality. We have a much lower overhead because we're in a country with low taxes, obviously cheaper cost of life. So we can actually compete in terms of prices, maintaining the same quality. So that's a difference we see against them if we're thinking about globally. But there is a project, and I think they're doing that as well. Paraguay, in the kind of sense, is what Mexico is to the US in terms of tax reduction. So products that you nationalize in Mexico and you sell to the US, I think have a much lower tax. In Paraguay, it's the same thing in Mercosur. A lot of people, what they do is you bring semi-finished products to Paraguay, and then you add a cost to the country here, so you have to do that. It's called Maquila law. So you basically nationalize the product. So if you import directly and your product is finished, the product origin is from China, Thailand, Philippines, whatever country you're importing. But if you add cost here and there's a specific percentage you have to add of that cost, you can nationalize it. Once you nationalize it, you sell to zero tax to Brazil and Argentina. And Brazil is a 200 million population country. So that's a huge thing that has happened here. And a lot of Brazilian factories are also coming to Paraguay for that. It's like, I'm moving my operations here because I can send for zero tax to Paraguay through the Mercosur law agreement. And I have a much cheaper cost of life, rent, overheads, and most importantly, tax. So in that kind of way, that's our strategy. There is a long-term goal to have that kind of production assembly here. But I see a lot of companies are also doing that. And with what's happening geopolitically, you know, with the US, with the tariffs and stuff like that, that's going to become more common, you know, because if tariffs are going to keep happening, you're going to have always to diversify your factories, where you're producing. And it's not only about diversifying for a supply chain thing, but it's also to make sure you're able to keep up with demand in certain regions. So you might have one in Europe, one in Mexico, one in Paraguay. I think Paraguay is very strategically for South America for that. So it's geopolitical things are also going to be affecting where this factory move throughout time.
From operations, supply chain, and geopolitics, Alejandro brought it back to something more personal, what he actually learned from building across borders.
I think living there, it's just like, you just get to compare how businesses work, how people live, the culture, and you always just, the more you travel, the more you speak with people, the more you learn about good practices and good cultures. You get to meet so many amazing people, you know. But for me, it was also kind of a challenge in how I see the world, and like all these US brands that I really like and you admire, and they're the biggest in the world. I think what is happening, because manufacturing is growing so fast and logistics is growing so fast, I think the opportunity is also growing for more people, you know. You don't have to be in a huge market like the US or Brazil or UK, because you have the options to contact factories. You can be really good at designing your own patents and new product designs, and you can build them. I think they're really good at two things, which is marketing and, you know, building brands and connecting with people and having that kind of emotional connection with the customer is really important. And I think they're really good at that, you know, and I still think they're the best in the world. And the second part is research and development, you know. So if we look at like back in time, like 20, 30 years ago, maybe the US had a more percentage in manufacturing, which has kind of lowered compared to the manufacturing world, but they're still very, very good in research and development, you know. And I think that's going to be the fight, you know, because anyone can produce anything today, but it's about who is always running first and having the best technology and the best innovation. So for me, I learned that. I think that's how I see what the US is really good at. But at the same time, it's like, those are things that you can do anywhere in the world.
He closed with what he'd tell any entrepreneur seriously considering Paraguay.
So I'll start with the things to be aware of first. And I think the things to be aware of first is just, it's very important that you talk to people, you know. Social networking here is very important. It's very nice because when it's a small country, you can talk to millionaires, and something that's not very available in first world countries, you know. You can sit and have a coffee with them and they'll want to share their story and how they see the country. But establishing social networks is really going to give you the in and outs that sometimes just Googling or reading online is not going to be. So I think talking to people is very important for whatever you're going to do here in Paraguay, because they're going to give you the in and outs and the cultural things and everything you need to navigate in establishing a company here. And then the second part, which is the only part I would suggest have a good consultation, is your judicial structure, you know, your legal structure. Just make sure you're working with a local company here, because they'll know the in and outs of the bureaucracy process throughout that, you know. But other than that, it's very agile. I would just make sure that you're not working just on paper, but get to know the country a little bit better outside of paper, you know, how things actually work. I think that's it. But in terms of opportunity, I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think, like I mentioned, and this is key, I think if you really want to use Paraguay as a base, you're going to get the cost benefits right away. But I think what you really need to work on if you're going to open up a business here is, how do I use this as a scaling base, you know? And that's where you need to explore. There's plenty of opportunities, like we mentioned, being in the middle of South America, having low fiscal, being pretty agile. Having a small market has its things in terms of trial and error. You can test out really fast. So I think there's a huge opportunity for people to come and open up businesses in Paraguay. But yeah, I would just check with the legal team, get to know the culture, read about the fiscal, and you're gonna love that for your business plan. And then also think about how you can scale, you know. So use it as a center base, but start thinking about Bolivia, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile, and how you can reach those markets. And you could probably be very competitive if you establish your company in Paraguay.
And that's a wrap on another Gone Global episode here on the Borderless Founder. If you want more stories like this, make sure you subscribe. We are sitting down with some of the most prominent business leaders from around the world to learn how they've taken their business global. Every episode in this series is a different business leader, a different market, a different industry, and a different story. You can see all our Gone Global series here. If you want to dive deep on the world's most exciting emerging markets to find your next business opportunity, You can see all of our Market Spotlight episodes here. And if you're thinking seriously about expanding your business globally, my team at Future Global would love to help. Find us at gofutureglobal.com. I'll drop a link in the description. Until the next one.